Thank you, Francesca, and thank you for inviting us today. And we also want to apologize to walking in late to a couple of the presentations, so sorry to have missed that. So, as a way of introduction, our project is called Emotional Architecture. And sorry if it's going to repeat, because we'll just give the intro in case someone else wasn't here last time. Emotional architecture is conceived as an exercise in addressing the social, intellectual, and psychic legacies of entering and leaving collaborations. At times it asks, what happens to knowledge that was born in collaboration when collaborations break up, which most often they do. This is not so much a question of how one obtains ideas after collaboration, but rather of how one endures them. In turn, it is a question of what is it that survives collaboration, remains as residue and as excess. What are the infrastructures in which collaborations come to be and which they leave behind? Not just in terms of the matter, documents and archives, but also in terms of the spirit. What is it that surpasses the end of a collaboration? To live on as consciousness, as known, is still not apparent nor manifest in other forms. The project is invested in thinking through a range of collaborations, from minor artistic collectives to larger scale institutions to temporary social movements. It started in the summer of 2012 as a series of conversations that took place in Paris between myself and Nida, and is currently envisioned through our participation program as a publication. Over the past month, we've been at Fondazione Spinola Banna, developing different thoughts and texts that are finding their way into form. And today we'll share some preliminary notes, very much still in development towards two of them. So Nida is going to present something first, and then I will present something second, and they kind of fit off each other. Thank you.
So these are just kind of notes, and I'm going to talk also somehow about like the how of my working. So to begin with, what one often finds oneself needing to begin with, that is a disclaimer. It's quite difficult for me to introduce this text in a kind of coherent sense because I'm still in the middle of this. But I just want to say that I'm approaching this piece of writing somehow as a kind of object. So each section has its own object, and so the text as a constellation of them. And in a way, like the hope is that, in the juxtapositioning of these different pieces, that some other kind of knowledge or meaning will be produced somehow. It's in this relationship, it's in a relationship to this kind of knowledge that the writing is not so interested in, say, research or theory, much less so argument, and much more, and therefore interested in or inclined to what writing can do. So, in a sort of performativity, like the potential for performativity by occupying the space from which language can happen. I'm just going to throw a few thoughts or concepts out there just to have something quite fragile, but for you to hold on to, and then and then kind of move on to a timeline as such. So one of the things that the text is primarily, though not only concerned with, is a kind of spontaneous combustion and subsequent material refusal. Specifically, the insertion of certain buildings in Cairo at various points in recent history. The idea that I'm speaking to now came to thought and in fact were felt more directly in relation to the specific context of the burning of two buildings, the Shura Council, which is the upper house of parliament, which we can think of as the very corridors of political decision making, and the National Theatre, arguably one of the more prominent stages of cultural production in the region, but also the site of spectacle. Both of these went up in flames weeks from each other in the summer of 2008. Now, granting these buildings their own agency, that is the agency of self-immolation, the ability to annihilate themselves, to commit suicide, the text is concerned with what is actually happening when things blow up. Or blow themselves up. What is it that we can come to know? Insofar as approach, I'm trying to think through the materiality of combustion, and not as such even think through, but to write from that place of matter. So we can think of the burning of these buildings in relation to wood and fire, but also very much in relation to electrical short circuits, which, at least in the case of 2008, was said to be the cause of these fires. A short circuit, as per its definition, often results from the unintended contact of components and the consequent accidental diversion of current. Now, if we think of short circuits also through popular cinematic tropes, it is, as you know, the electrical short circuit is often the gateway to other dimensions. So by way of a freak incident, we arrive at an opening onto other possible worlds. Possible worlds that are governed by different, often uncanny sets of codes in unbelievable or impossible or unimaginable, but in that world is then entirely possible. Some of this is in order to also ask the question, or some questions to history, questions such as, what did that burning building know? What might it have been saying? What world was it opening itself up to? Because we did, I think, and this started very much in conversation in 2008, somehow in the summer of like, two fires and a landslide, we did feel that these acts of devastation and disintegration, in them something was being said. In that sense, I'm also interested in the language of fire and in what it is that may have been the thing that was being spoken in a moment when certain things consume themselves and ate themselves out. In the particular historical context of the text we'll be dealing with, we first started to think of this idea of combustion in relation to a moment where there seemed to be, and probably there was, an absence of a certain possibility of speech, and also a certain possibility of protest. So at a time when certain things that were being suppressed and could not actually be said or even imagined, other things stepped in to act from that space of speech, or perhaps in place of that speech. So now I'm just going to switch, and basically what I'm going to try and do is share with you a brief sketch of dates in relation to a series of events that basically comprise the narrative arc that frames this piece of writing. The sequence of events and associations they invite, or rather the ones they enable, are somehow kind of crucial components and indispensable to the ontology of the text. So they are, in fact, the crux of the building blocks. I'm really quite averse to linearity, so but for the purpose of today, I'll just kind of go through this chronologically. These are not all the dates that might come in, and like I said, it's highly unlikely that the final text will deal with them in the same order. So this notion of a timeline of events, whether linear or not, has made itself prominent to the structure of the text at a very early stage. However, as I said before, there was a very specific moment when it became possible for this text to be thought, which is in that summer of 2008. So before the end of this trajectory of events, which is just to say that the last event doesn't conclude anything, but also to point out that because the conviction towards this text actually came in relation to that single summer, to now have this larger cross-century drama kind of unfold or appear was also unexpected and kind of happening in thinking through. The other thing just to mention before I get in there is that the text is also being thought through and developed in kind of close and constant conversation, not only with Malak and myself, as I said, but also now more recently with Haid Al-Azian, who is an artist based in Beirut, he will be producing a set of drawings that will eventually accompany the texts. These drawings are being conceived as quite integral to the text. They may very well be their own actors, and potentially even present their own possibilities for the narrative that is being constructed, or the meaning that is being made. This is to say that these drawings, while dealing with the very same content may at times also diverge from the propositions of the text, so as to make their own, do their own thing. The drawings have not been made yet, and so the images accompanying today's presentation have been put together partly from a wide range of online resources, highly pixelated, and these images might inform the visual language or may not inform the visual language of the drawings at the end of it. And then partly the images are from drawings that Hayek has made in his own previous and ongoing projects. These are not specific to this text, but I'm just kind of sharing them to, get maybe the kind of scale of what it might start to look like. And you will also see that they share some of the very same specific concerns that this text has. So to the timeline, I'm just going to kind of talk through it. And of course, I won't be able to tell you kind of everything that is, that is relevant or fascinating about each of these events, and the devil is definitely in the details, but I guess I'm going to treat this as an exercise in seeing what these broad brush strokes can produce. Sorry, that was just to say it. So 1798, Napoleon's expedition arrives to Egypt, primarily with the intention of protecting French trade interests and undermining British's access to India, and also establishes quite a significant scientific enterprise in the region. The Institute of Egypt is set up as an academy on the 24th of the following year, that same year, to foster the development of Egypt so as to support the French expedition and their forces. The following year, in 1799, the Institute takes up a decision to publish quite a huge scholarly work called The Description of